Before we begin, a gentle note. This story touches on family, dignity, regret, and second chances. If you're not in the headspace for those themes today, it's okay to pause and come back later. Rain hammered the tall windows of Oakwood Grill, turning the city lights outside into smeared ribbons of silver. Inside,
My
everything
dears,
was
it's so good
polished,
to see you.
soft
You
jazz,
too.
crystal
Please join
glasses,
us.
We are
expensive
waiting for you.
Of
perfume,
course, my love.
and the quiet confidence of people who never expected to be told no. Barbara stepped up to the reservation stand as if she belonged there, even though her hands trembled around her purse. She was 80 today, navy velvet dress, pearls that had been her mother's, lipstick carefully applied like armor. She hadn't come for attention. She'd come for one small, stubborn victory, to sit down, eat a warm meal, and prove to herself she still had a place in the world. The young maitre d' didn't even meet her eyes. His thumb scrolled on a tablet. "I'm sorry, ma'am, without a reservation we can't seat you." "We're fully booked tonight." Barbara blinked once slowly, the way you do when you're trying not to look hurt. "A table for one," she tried again, voice polite, measured. "Just for dinner." He repeated the same line, cleaner this time, like he'd practiced it on people who didn't matter. And just like that, Barbara felt it, that sharp, childish sting of being dismissed. Not because she couldn't afford it. She could buy the building if she wanted. But because money doesn't purchase welcome. It doesn't purchase warmth. It doesn't purchase someone looking you in the eye and saying, "Of course." If you're enjoying stories like this on Kindness Valley, take a second right now. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you've ever had a moment that made you feel invisible, or a moment where you stepped in for someone else. Barbara turned toward the revolving door, toward the wet sidewalk and the echo of her own footsteps. Her throat tightened, but she refused to let it show. Pride had been her closest companion for decades, pride and work and a quiet penthouse that was too big for one heartbeat. Then she heard it. A child's laugh, clear, sudden, alive, cutting through the restaurant's expensive murmur like a bell. Barbara paused. Near the window sat a man in his mid-30s, not dressed like the rest. Corduroy jacket, simple shirt, tired eyes that still held something kind. Across from him was a little girl, maybe 7, hair messy from playing, face glowing as she talked with her hands. They stopped eating. The man's attention was fixed on Barbara like he'd recognized something he couldn't ignore. He stood. And when Barbara turned, confused, the man lifted his hand, not a wave, not pity. An invitation, gentle, respectful, certain. Barbara's first instinct was suspicion. People didn't offer kindness like that in places like this. Not without an angle, not without a camera, not without wanting something. But the man walked closer anyway, careful not to bump into waiters carrying trays. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I'm sorry they treated you that way. My name's Daniel. This is my daughter, Lucy. Our table seats 4 and it's just us. Would you join us? The rain's awful and no one should be sent out like that." Barbara's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. She felt ridiculous, 80 years old and stunned into silence by basic decency. "I don't want to intrude," she managed, clutching her purse tighter. It's your family dinner." Daniel's smile was small, like he didn't want to embarrass her. "That's exactly why. Lucy and I are missing a grandma at our table." Lucy leaned over her plate and waved like they were already friends. "Your necklace looks like a princess necklace," she announced. "You have to sit." Something in Barbara's chest cracked, just a hairline fracture, but enough to let warmth leak in. She nodded once, careful, as if the movement might shatter the moment. Daniel pulled out a chair for her, not performative, just natural, like he'd been raised to notice when someone needed a seat. The maitre d' watched, uncomfortable, but said nothing. At the table, Lucy talked nonstop. School, drawings, the time she tried to bake cookies, and they turned into rocks, her new favorite book. Daniel listened the way good fathers do, like every word mattered. Barbara found herself laughing, quiet at first, then real. It startled her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed at dinner without forcing it. Halfway through the meal, Barbara's courage finally caught up with her loneliness. "Today is my birthday," she said, eyes on the tablecloth. "I'm 80, Lucy gasped like Barbara had announced she could fly. 80. "That's like 1,000,000, Daniel chuckled, then raised a hand for the waiter. "Could we get dessert and a candle, please?" Barbara shook her head. "You don't have to." "Yes, we do," Lucy said, deadly serious. "Birthdays need candles." When the cake came, the candle flame flickered in the soft light, stubborn against the air conditioning. The staff sang quietly, and Lucy sang louder, slightly off-key, like she didn't care who heard. Barbara stared at the tiny flame and felt her eyes sting. Daniel watched her carefully. "Make a good wish," he said. Barbara did. But it wasn't for more years, it wasn't for comfort, it was for a chance to undo something. Because while Lucy chatted, Barbara had noticed things, small things that wouldn't let her rest. The curve of Lucy's eyebrows, the exact shape of Daniel's jaw when he smiled. Details that tugged at a memory Barbara had buried under decades of success. When Daniel mentioned his last name, Taylor, Barbara's stomach went cold. Ellen Taylor. A maid from her house 35 years ago. A young woman Barbara had dismissed as careless and ambitious when she found out she was pregnant. A young woman Barbara had paid to disappear. Because Barbara's son, Roger, was supposed to have a spotless future. Barbara had told herself she'd protected her family name. Now she realized she'd destroyed a life. And Daniel, this gentle, hardworking single father, could only be one thing: family. Barbara smiled through the rest of dinner like she wasn't unraveling. When Daniel insisted on paying, pulling crumpled bills from a worn wallet, Barbara's throat tightened again, this time with shame. Dinner probably cost him days of work. For her, it would have been nothing. Outside, the rain had eased into a damp, clean hush. Lucy hugged Barbara's legs before they parted. "Happy birthday, Grandma Barbara," she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Barbara nearly buckled. A black car slid up to the curb, Barbara's driver arriving late. Daniel's eyes widened. For the first time, his posture shifted, like he was suddenly unsure where he stood. Barbara moved fast, not wanting to explain, not tonight. "Call me tomorrow," she told Daniel, pressing calm into her voice. "I have work I need done, a house restoration if you're interested." Daniel nodded, still processing. "Yes, ma'am." In the car, Barbara stared at the streetlight glow and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. If she couldn't rewrite the past, she could at least stop running from it. The next day, Daniel arrived at an old brownstone Barbara owned in Brooklyn, dusty, forgotten, beautiful bones under neglect. Barbara met him in plain clothes, no pearls, no performance. Daniel ran his hand along the banister like he was greeting an old friend. "This wood, it's incredible. It deserves respect," Barbara said. "And so do you." She offered him the job with conditions: do it properly and buy the tools needed to do it right. When Daniel admitted he couldn't afford equipment, Barbara didn't hand him charity. She framed it as an advance, an investment in skill, not pity. For days, the brownstone filled with the sound of work, sandpaper, saws, careful measuring. Lucy came after school sometimes, sitting on the floor drawing while Daniel worked. Barbara found herself making snacks, fumbling through the simple joy of being useful to someone besides herself. She didn't tell them the truth, not yet. Then one stormy afternoon, Barbara got dizzy, her purse fell, things spilled, keys, lipstick, pills, papers. And an old wallet that popped open as if it had been waiting for this moment. Lucy, eager to help, picked up a photograph that slid free. She frowned at it, then held it up to Daniel. "Daddy, he looks like you in fancy clothes." Daniel took it with a laugh that died halfway. The man in the photo was young, smiling beside a sports car, carefree, wealthy, and unmistakably similar to Daniel. Daniel flipped the photo over. On the back, in elegant handwriting, "To my beloved son, Roger, 1985, Daniel's face drained." "Roger," he whispered like the name had teeth. Barbara froze, caught in the open. Slowly, Daniel looked at her. The warmth in his eyes didn't vanish all at once. It broke, piece by piece. "Who are you?" he asked, voice shaking. "Why do you have this? Why did you invite us into your life?" Barbara's lips parted. No lie would survive this. "I'm Barbara," she said, barely audible. "Roger was my son." Daniel stared, understanding crashing over him like the rain outside. "Barbara Vanderbilt." Barbara nodded. Daniel's jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped. "My mother, Ellen Taylor, worked for you. She told me about the man she loved and the woman who destroyed her." Barbara's eyes filled. "Yes, you threw her out," Daniel said, louder now, pain rising. "You left her to struggle. We lived in one room. She worked until her hands cracked. She died exhausted, and you sat on your money." Lucy hid behind Daniel's leg, frightened by the change in him. Barbara reached into her purse with trembling fingers and pulled out the deed papers. I was going to give you the house, she whispered. Not to buy you, to make sure you and Lucy never suffer again. You're my grandson. I didn't deserve to find you, but when I saw you that night, Daniel stepped back like her words burned. Don't! He shook his head, eyes bright with anger and grief. You don't get to appear at the end and pretend it fixes everything. You don't get to play grandma because you feel lonely. Barbara stood unsteady. Daniel, please. He scooped Lucy into his arms. We're leaving. At the door he turned once, voice low and final. You have a lot, Mrs. Vanderbilt, but you don't have family. Family doesn't throw you away. The door slammed. The silence afterward was worse than any insult. Barbara sat alone in the brownstone and stared at the restored wood, the smooth shine Daniel's hands had given it. She realized she'd spent her life polishing the wrong things, reputation, control, power, while the most important parts of her were rotting quietly in the dark. 2 weeks passed. Daniel didn't return. The renovation stopped. Barbara's lawyer offered solutions that sounded like weapons, lawsuits, contracts, demands. Barbara sent him away. Instead, she wrote a letter, no excuses. No, but I meant well. Just the truth. What she did, why she did it, and how ashamed she was. She admitted Ellen had been braver than she'd ever been. She admitted she'd been terrified of scandal and called it standards. Then Barbara took a taxi, no driver, no black car, and walked the last blocks to Daniel's small apartment carrying an old toolbox that had belonged to Roger. She left it with the letter at Daniel's door, rang the bell, and stepped back into the stairwell like a guilty child. From hiding, she heard the door open. Silence. Then a sound that nearly broke her, Daniel's quiet sob. The next day, footsteps returned to the brownstone, one heavy, one light. Barbara turned, heart pounding. Lucy ran to her first and hugged her waist. I missed you, she said simply, like love didn't need permission. Daniel stood still, eyes tired, voice controlled. I'm not here to pretend it never happened. Barbara nodded, tears falling freely now. I wouldn't ask you to. Daniel took a slow breath. I don't want your money as a gift, but I'll finish the job. I'll charge for it fairly, and you can come to dinner on Sundays. Barbara's lips trembled. Sundays. Slowly, Daniel added, on my terms for Lucy. And for my mother, who didn't want me to carry poison in my heart. Barbara pressed a hand to her chest as if to keep it together. Thank you, she whispered. I'll do it right this time. And she tried, not with grand speeches, with consistency. She showed up. She listened when Daniel talked about Ellen. She stopped correcting, stopped controlling. She learned how to be present, really present. When Lucy got sick, Barbara sat by her bed and read stories until Lucy fell asleep. When Daniel struggled, Barbara didn't throw money at the problem. She offered time, contacts, guidance only when asked. And when Barbara did use her fortune, she did it publicly and honestly. She created the Ellen Taylor Foundation, dedicated to helping single mothers with housing support, legal aid, and job training, so no woman would ever be forced into disappearance the way Ellen had been. Years later, when Daniel opened his own woodworking shop, the sign on the window read, Taylor Woodwork. No fancy press, no society friends. Just Daniel, Lucy, and Barbara standing together in quiet sunlight. Barbara didn't die as an empire owner. She died as grandma, with Daniel holding her hand, and Lucy's drawings taped to her bedside wall. If this story moved you, support Kindness Valley by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And tell me in the comments. Could you forgive someone like Barbara, and what would forgiveness look like for you?